Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to the TT Podcast. Grand Tour season will soon be declared open, and we're off on a lap of Italy. Here to preview the race from the baths of Budapest to the Roman amphitheatre of Verona is my co-host Tom. Tom, come stai?
Molto bene, grazie. Yeah, I'm in the mood. Do you know what I've done? Every week whenever we record one of these, I have my little sticky notes. You know the sticky notes app on the computer?
I'm familiar with it, yeah.
Yeah. This week, I've changed the colour and I've got a pink sticky note in front of me.
Oh, the Giro is officially here. Look at that. Here we go. It's all happening now.
So I'm ready.
I hope that music got you psyched up as well, Tom. Tom, what you've just heard is the score of Antonio Vivaldi, who I'm sure you'll be aware is a Venetian composer who sadly lived in a pre-Giro epoch. He lived 150 years before the start of the Giro d'Italia, which is obviously a great shame for him. But for us, we're living in the time of the Giro d'Italia. Tom, how excited are you?
Well, first off, I'll say that you know that I did not know that was Vivaldi because I had to ask you. I went, is he from Verona? And you went, no, he's from Venice. So, yeah, I reckon I'm probably more excited about the cycling than I was. Look, very good piece of music, if that's your kind of thing, but classical music's definitely where I'd fall down. So definitely the bike racing that is going to take priority for me.
Absolutely. I think the bike racing gets the blood pumping just that little bit more.
Quite a lot more.
Right, Tom, let's talk about how we're going to attack this episode then. So let's go through the route. Let's point out the stages that are standing out to us. I have prepared for you a 4-question quiz on this year's Giro d'Italia. And then we'll have a look at the riders, who we're excited to see, who we think is going to do well for the jerseys, who could win the overall, who is, going to be inconsequential.
Yeah, I've got the notes in front of me, but are we starting with the quiz?
No, let's start with the route.
Okay.
Let's start at
the beginning?
I would say we'll start with, or Tom, what you could say is we'll start at the partenza.
We could say that.
Yeah. Budapest, Tom, do you know what I did this afternoon?
Did you go to Hungary?
Nope. I went online to a website titled 33 Astonishing Facts About Budapest You Should Know.
Have you been? I've never been. Budapest is one of those, you see it on Instagram all the time, and everyone in the world seems to have been there except me.
I've never been.
Yeah.
And everyone seems to know everything about it as well. There's this whole thing about the two cities either side of the river, and then they formed to make Budapest. I don't really know. Yeah. Those weren't the facts that were standing out to me, Tom. I can tell you anything you want about thermal spas. I can tell you that Budapest has the second oldest underground train system in Europe.
After London, that must be.
Exactly.
Yep.
And it is also home to, it was home to Erno Rubik, who was the creator of what, Tom?
Is it as obvious as I think it is? Is it in his name?
What do you think he created?
I think he created the Rubik's Cube.
He did indeed. Now, who, Tom, will unlock the puzzle on stage 1?
Look, we're going to see quite a common theme here, but as you know, stage 1 is, there's not much to it until a little bit of a punchy finish. And so who's in this year's Giro who loves a punchy finish, who I back at every single race we ever talk about?
I would guess it would probably be Mathieu van der Poel.
It is Mathieu van der Poel. So there's my answer. Move on. Next stage. He's in the Maggiore, so it's a done deal already.
So I have him down there as well. I think also Hungarian Attila Valter could rain on his parade. You'll remember, Tom, that he led the GC for a handful of stages last year, Attila Valter.
Yeah, of course.
So I think he'll want it, but whether his desire for it is going to outweigh Mathieu van der Poel's sheer power on a 5% 4-kilometer hill remains to be seen.
It really plays into Van der Poel's hands, this, doesn't it?
It's a bit, yeah. It's almost written for it. I could see why he's there. Get himself in pink, have a nice day out. Fortunately for him, there's not really that many super difficult climbs this year. There's no Zoncolan, there's no Mortirolo, there's no Stelvio. We do have Etna on stage 4,
Yeah, I've got that written down. Very comprehensive notes here. I've written the number 4 and the word Etna, and that is the extent of my notes.
You know what, Tom? That's nothing short of the preparation that I assumed you would do for these episodes, to be honest.
Well, to be fair, Etna it's become almost obligatory to have it in the Giro every year now, hasn't it? So you don't need that many notes because you just think, well, what did I say last year and the year before and the year before and the year before when they went up it?
It's a bit of a slog of a climb, but it's not really super challenging. I mean, the climb this year technically is 23 kilometers long at an average of 6%. But the climbing starts well before that. I mean, we're going to end up with about a 40-kilometer slog of a climb. The pace will be quite fast because there's no super big gradients. There's no super big gradients. There's no difficult gradients. I would expect people with bad legs there to get spat. And the old cliche, Tom, which is what the race won't be won here.
It could be lost.
But it could be lost here. Let's move swiftly on because there's actually not much going on in that in the first couple of weeks, to be honest.
I like the Etna climb, but my main issue with it always is that it's an incredibly active volcano. And I'm just like you see Etna in the news every couple of months going, oh, it's erupting again. I was like, oh, okay, cycle up it. Yeah, that's fine.
So they finished. So I was looking at the stage and they finish. It's obviously not at the top because the top is, bubbling lava.
Yeah.
And they finish at the Refugio Sapienza, I think it's called, which is like some sort of like B&B cafe restaurant thing. And I was like, what sort of terrible business decision do you have to make to open up on one of the most active volcanoes in the world?
Well, I tell you what, this moves us on perfectly. The next stage I've got written is stage 8, where they return to Naples for the first time in 9 years. Another active.
True? Is that?
It is, yeah. There's 2. Right, so Mark Cavendish is back in the Giro for the first time in 9 years, and they're going back to Naples for the first time in 9 years.
Did he win in Naples last time?
No, I didn't do that much research.
We didn't get that far. That's okay.
I was going to say that they're using Naples as a start town, but they're doing a loop and basically finishing there as well. Yeah, another big volcano. That's what Napoli is built around. Volcanic soil, very fertile, so that's why you get big population centers near volcanoes.
Wow.
Making all that nice wine. And yeah, after, as you said, there's not too much going on in the first week or so. They have that rest day, don't they, before they come to Etna? They've a really early rest day. I've never seen that after the first 3 stages.
Yeah, and look, Tom, I was going to talk to you about this because we usually do our rest day recaps, but I think maybe we give that one a miss because I don't know how much, unless Van der Poel does some sort of madness in stage 1 that merits a 40-minute episode.
Yeah.
We might have to jump in at the second rest day because, how are the legs after 3 days? They're going to be ready to kick on. What's
and one of those days is like a 9K time trial as well.
Yeah, exactly. They've barely got 400 kilometers in their legs by the time they have a rest day.
Yeah, so they've got a couple of stages after Etna where they just sort of work their way up that coast until they get to Naples, which, as you said, like it's nothing too challenging. It's hilly, like it'll sort the GC out, and there'll be some gaps, but it's just one of them with the geography of Italy. You know that it's all coming in the last week.
Yeah, when we get down to the Dolomites, that's where the racing's actually going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I want to give special mention to stage 10 from Pescara to Jesi as well, because that's where I spend all my time when I'm in Italy.
Is that true?
It is. It's also where Roberto Mancini was born.
Wow, what a fountain of knowledge you've been this episode so far, Tom. Long may it remain.
Plenty more to come.
Stage 9, day before that, summit finish on Blockhouse.
Very Italian sounding name.
Yeah, I know it doesn't. It sounds like something in the Lake District or something, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Or in the Yorkshire Dales. It's not for you and I who spend most of our time drooling over the stage profiles of the Vuelta. This is a bit of a PG-13 course, I think.
This has been the thing for me. These Grand Tours have their different characteristics, and the Vuelta is the one that's characterized by these just brutal, basically 90 degrees straight up.
So what I want to say about this is I was reading a preview and they said that this climb, it maxes out at 14%, right? Mm-hmm. And somebody was like, this is absurdly steep, mouth-watering gradients. And I was like, if it's not surpassing 20%, I don't want to hear about it.
No. Like, they're not going to suffer at all, are they? This is what I was saying. The Giro is more known for it's the high mountains, isn't it? They get some real altitude when you get deep into the third week of the Giro. They send them up to like almost 3,000 meters sometimes.
But we're not here for the punishing gradients, unless we're talking the Zoncolan, which is obviously not here this year.
No, exactly. As fearsome as the Angliru or the climb up to Covadonga or somewhere, all those horrible places in northern Spain, they're quite altitude wise, they're quite low, so you don't have that trade-off where there's no oxygen in the air either. So you've at least got full power to try and get up there, more or less.
Okay, so that's obviously where the challenge comes in here, and we'll get onto that as we get into the later stages. Stage 11 is a bit of a mouthful, if you pardon the pun I'm about to make. Sant'Ag, here we go. Here's the Italian coming through. Santa Cangelo di Romagna to Reggio Emilia, which they have named on the website the Parmigiano Reggiano food stage.
I've got trivia about Reggio Emilia if you want it, but
you know what? I do. Please.
It's where Sassuolo play because their stadium in Sassuolo itself was deemed, they're such a small club that when they got promoted into Serie A, they were told you're not allowed to play in Sassuolo because your stadium's too terrible, so you've got to move down the road and play in this stadium, in Reggio Emilia's stadium, which is bigger and has seats and is nowhere near the town of Sassuolo.
Is that true? Wow.
Yeah.
The season ticket holders must be spending all their hard-earned on train fares for that one.
It's right next to the high-speed station. I've looked at going there because you can get there from Milan in half an hour. And it's quite cheap. But they lost 6-1 to Napoli at the weekend, so I probably wouldn't.
Okay. The stage also is a bit dull, that one. It's a straight line. It's as flat as they come.
Isn't it the old? It's the old Roman road, isn't it? Is it the Via Emilia? Something. It probably is. That's what we call Emilia.
You know what? I haven't looked, but I'm going to go ahead and say yes. It probably is.
Because there's, as I said, the railway line follows that in a dead straight line, and so does one of the main Italian motorways. Just goes from sort of Rimini on the coast all the way up to Milan, and it's just across this plain where completely flat and not much there. Farmland, vineyards.
Anybody who's planning their days out in the next few weeks, stage 11 wouldn't waste your time.
Unless you want some cheese, apparently.
The Parmigiano Reggiano food stage.
Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. After that, we get into some difficult mountain stages. Stages 15, 16, and 17. Nothing particularly characteristic about them. They're just big spikes, which are where the mountains are. But we do have 7 category 1 climbs scattered across those 3 stages.
Yeah, it looks quite brutal. They've got that rest day in Salo, which will be a stunning day out for them because that is a lovely part of the world, right on the shores of the lake. And then they move into the Alps. This is one thing I'd like. They've got a lot of stage finishes. They're not, how the tour goes and you end up in some quite small towns and places you don't really know. And you're looking at this Giro route and you're getting Naples, Turin, Genoa, Verona, all the big cities in Italy have just gone, we'll take you around everywhere. Not Milan and Rome, but otherwise. And sorry, that's what we're getting onto. You get into the Alps, which is where they're going, and straight away, we'll finish in Turin. Easy.
Fair play to the Italian organisers for giving us all the big hitters.
And then, as you said, you get into the Alps there, and I think there's is it that stage into Genoa that I just mentioned? Is not too bad. It's an intermediate one, and then they've got that San Remo to Cuneo. Cuneo quite often features in the Tour as well. That must be it's right near the French border, which is one for the sprinters. And then, after that, 4 of the following 5 stages are just brutal high mountain finishes.
So I honestly wouldn't be surprised to see some of the sprinters just drop out here. Like if you're Caleb Ewan, there's absolutely no point in you just to get into the line here.
No, and there's that one stage, stage 18.
If I would have my plane ticket booked now to come home by about stage 14.
The stage 18 finished in Treviso, which the only reason I've heard of Treviso is because there's an airport there and you can fly there to get to Venice. So perfect. Works out. Win the sprint there, go home.
There you go. Look, get there into Venice and go and lap up some Vivaldi.
Yeah, exactly.
The next big one I have is stage 20, which people who know Grand Tours will know that is the penultimate stage. We're in the Dolomites. The race will be won here. Finishes on the Passo Fedea, goes over the Passo Pordoi. Pretty tough climbs by the looks of it.
Yeah, that's what I've got here. That you get over the Passo Pordoi, you get the Cima Coppi because it's the highest point of the race. I've got 2,236 meters written here, which
Is that the altitude?
That is, yeah. Which, to be honest, compared to what you can get normally in the Giro, it's definitely not as bad as the Stelvio or somewhere. So, but that's not too bad. And then, yeah, that summit finish up to the you just said it. What's it called? The
Fedea.
That looks steep. I'll be honest.
Finally, right. We've had to wait 3 weeks, and then we have something that looks quite punishing.
It looks really punishing. 3 weeks in, after two out of category climbs coming before it on the stage as well. That is going to be a horrible finish.
Yeah. Stage 21. A little doddle around Verona. Last time the race was in Verona, Tom, you'll remember, was 2019 when Richard Carapaz won. It gives way to quite a nice closing ceremony, doesn't it? When they come into the amphitheatre.
Oh, it's lovely. I can't wait for that day because I'm going to be on our Twitter making as many Romeo and Juliet puns as I can.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
There's a little bit of a bump in that stage as well. We've got a 250 meter climb in the middle of the stage, and then there's a descent off that, which is a bit technical. So there's one final chance for a fatal error before the race finishes.
Fatal?
But, fatal in terms of GC hopes. Hopefully not in terms of like life and death.
I was going to say that's been one of the big takeaways. I know we're finishing with that time trial there, but there's very little time trialing distance in this.
You know what? Wait, is this part of my quiz? Let me see. This is part of my quiz, so I can't tell you my fact here.
Okay, save it for later.
But yes, you're correct. There is only 26.4 kilometers of time trialing in this. I went through and noted down the time trial distances for the last 10 years. And it kind of gradually gets, towards the present day, it gets fewer and fewer, really. Like you look back at 2013, we had almost 100 kilometers of time trialing, including a team time trial. I actually have a little anecdote here for you, Tom, and I can see why they don't have the big long time trial stages anymore. Because flashback to 2015, Giro d'Italia, stage 14 is a 59.4 kilometer individual time trial.
Yeah.
That is like Olympic distance. There's no need for that.
I like that in a race.
No. Okay, that's fair enough. But what it does is, as it did in 2015, just shreds the GC. On that stage, Fabio Aru went into the stage leading. Second was Alberto Contador. And Aru shipped 3 minutes to Contador on that time trial. And Contador then went up and won. I mean, once you lose that amount of time over such a long distance, you can't really make that up in the high mountains.
No, but that's what I like, because the GC is supposed, it's the all-round classification. How many Grand Tours do we go to now where we see the overall winner also winning the mountains classification? And they're just turning them all into races for the climbers, which I don't like too much. And when you had more time trialing distance in there, I think it forced GC candidates to be better all-round riders, which I don't think is the case now. Certainly here, I think, we will see it go to just an out-and-out climber because there's not enough time trialing distance. And it's definitely the trend going that way in the Tour de France as well. Possibly, as I say, I've said this plenty of times, but I think that's for the organisers, that's their best chance of getting a French winner, is to take time trialing out of it as much as possible.
Well, it might be our best chance at a French winner at the Giro this year as well, to be honest. I don't think long time trials are the answer. I think they're too influential in the GC, and I think you're going to put people off. I don't
know. If you wanted to be a good GC rider 10, 15 years ago, you need to be able to climb, but time trialing was so important. And to be honest, even now, look, who are the two best GC riders in cycling at the moment? They're not at this race, but if there was time trialing,
and Bardet. Right, it's the two Slovenians you're getting at, isn't it? It's Roglic and Pogačar.
And if there was time trialing distance, I don't think either of them would suffer, because I do think they're just the two best all-round riders there as well. And that's why I think this goes the other way. I think they're just trying to emphasize the climbing to detract from or try and defend against the all-round ability and the time trialing ability of riders like Pogacar and Roglic.
I think, right.
Because Romain Bardet is not winning a time trial against those two, is he?
Right, let's move on. Quiz time, Tom.
Excellent.
4 questions that I've prepared this afternoon for you.
Mm-hmm.
Question 1. A couple of them are quite easy. A couple of them are really hard. There's no in between, I don't think.
Okay.
Question 1's one of the hard ones, but either you know it or you don't. How many Hungarians? I was supposed to preface this by saying the Giro d'Italia this year starts in Hungary, where there are 3 stages, blah, 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 Budapest. How many Hungarians are on the start list?
Right, well, you've named Attila Valter, so there's at least one.
Correct. Very well deduced.
You know what? I've got the start list open in another tab here. I could go and have a look quickly.
Don't
but
even
I won't.
think about it.
All right, 3.
Ah, you're correct. Oh, no. Okay, right, yeah. Attila Valter.
I can't name them.
No, obviously not. We've got Eric Vetter, Iolo Cometa, who I'm sure you were going to say.
Yeah.
And Barnabas Peak, Intermarché, Wanty, Gober, Materio.
I'll tell you what, if there's 2 teams I'm overly familiar with, it's definitely Iolo Cometa and Wanty.
Okay. Second question. Stage 5. This is one of the easy ones, by the way. I probably shouldn't say that at the start of the question, should I? Stage 5, Tom, finishes on the island of Sicily. And it finishes in the hometown of which Italian cyclist?
This I do know. This came up. I actually did read a preview that said they're trying to. They're almost treating this the first few steps. Well, once they get into Italy, they're treating it as like a little homecoming tour for Vincenzo Nibali.
Correct.
So I really hope it's him. If it's not him, after I've said that, we're in trouble.
It is Nibali. Can you name the town?
Messina.
It is Messina.
Because he's the shark of Messina, isn't he?
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's 2 for 2 so far. Question 3. Stab in the dark, another one of those ones. Only 26.4 kilometers of time trial kilometers this year. This is the fewest amount of time trial kilometers at the Giro d'Italia since which decade? And here are your options. The 90s, the 60s, the 30s, or all time?
No, right. It's not all time, because when I was doing my research for this, I'm sure it mentioned somewhere that there was a year where there was no time trialing. What are the options again?
90s, the 1990s, the 1960s, the 1930s, or all time?
I think it's the 60s.
It is the 60s.
I'm telling you, I've done my research this time.
It's 1962. This is where the pink sticky notes got you. You've obviously been more motivated to add things to it. 1962. You are completely correct, Tom. There was not an inch of time trialing that year.
I'm delighted with how this is going so far.
It's going really well. I don't know if you've ever got all of them right on a quiz, Tom. In the year and a half we've been doing this podcast,
there's big pressure coming on. Quote unquote must be an easy question here as well.
It's another bit of a stab in the dark, really, but it's the sort of research that I think you would have done for this episode. So I'd be rooting for you here had I not written the questions and wanted you to get it wrong. Mark Cavendish, who is perhaps best known for his love affair and antics at the Tour de France, hasn't ridden the Giro d'Italia since 2013 when he won. That's not the question. When he won the sprints classification. How many stages
that's what was coming.
Did Mark Cavendish win that year?
5.
Oh my God. It is 5. He won the opening and closing stages and 3 somewhere in between.
Maths, good.
And he's won 15 stages at the Giro d'Italia in total. I don't think that gets spoken about enough, you know?
No, because obviously his record at the Tour is the one that everyone knows about. But he has won a lot of stages at the Vuelta and the Giro as well when he's deigned to turn up for them.
Yeah, and obviously it's not, groundbreaking news to say that Mark Cavendish has won a lot of bike races, but I think it's quite nice that we can still fall upon stats and be astonished by that.
I'm so happy with that quiz.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah, that went really well.
Made my day.
Has it actually? Christ, what a sad little day you must be having.
It's a bank holiday. I've got nothing to do. I'm just waiting for the football to start later.
Let's talk about some of the riders, Tom, that are going to be competing at the 105th edition of the Giro d'Italia. And shall we start with the man we've just been speaking about, Mark Cavendish?
Yeah, why not? I think he'll be quietly confident going into this. There's been a late change in that quick step team as well. So he's got Michael Morku has come in as to, I'm sure Mark Cavendish will be very happy to, all of a sudden he's got Morku leading him out instead. Because obviously that plays into his hands. Although I think the sprints are looking really interesting. There's 3 or 4 high quality sprinters there.
Okay, right. Who's on your list of high quality sprinters?
Right, I'll just rattle them off quickly. Cav, obviously. Caleb Ewan, Arnaud Demar, Fernando Gaviria are the 4 I've got written down.
Okay. I would add to that Biniam Girmay, and I would add Phil Bauhaus at Bahrain, whatever they're called now, Victorious. So I think those two could get results. Those two will get results, I think.
I'll be honest, if Caleb Ewan's on form, I think he's the quickest guy there.
Yeah.
And it's not close.
Yeah, no, I agree. What's interesting about the Cav to the Giro thing is that implicitly in that announcement, we're basically getting another announcement, which is that Jakobsen's going to the Tour.
Yeah, I have read recently that I don't think Cav's too pleased with his perceived position in the quick step depth chart at the moment. Because obviously, yeah, as you said, if he was top of the list, he'd be down for the Tour and probably not riding the Giro.
Look, it's understandable that Jakobsen's going to the Tour and that Jakobsen would go to the Tour. But I mean, Mark Cavendish, if you think of the PR opportunity,
well, that's what I think.
When he breaks the record, he is the reigning green jersey winner. He probably would nab a stage if he's got Morku and the whole team built around him. And it would do massive. Look, we'd talk about it. And that's huge in terms of cycling media.
It's difficult because I'm not sure what the trade-off is. Most of the money in cycling comes from your sponsorships, and it's not going to come from the prize money for winning sprint stages at the Tour. And you have to think that Mark Cavendish, just by virtue of being there, probably carries more weight than a couple of Fabio Jakobsen stage wins. And that, I mean, no disrespect to Jakobsen by saying that, because it sounds really poor, but it's just Cav is who he is.
Mark Cavendish just turning up
is
better than Jakobsen winning 5 stages.
That could be a very Anglo-centric way of looking at it as well. Not that Cav's English either, because he's Manx. But Mark Cavendish being who he is and what he could potentially achieve at the Tour, you just got to think the media attention on him would be far more than on Jakobsen if he wins.
Okay, no, yeah, that's fair enough. There was another team announcement here that I thought Baird, is that the past tense? Yeah, Baird. Boar?
I don't know. What's the full sentence?
Baird implications for the rest of the team announcements.
I think it's Boar.
Okay, then Boar implications or
as in like to bear witness to something.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure you said bore witness to Mark Cavendish winning his 30 whatever Tour de France stage.
Okay. Anyway, that was the start of the sentence. The second half of the sentence is Richard Carapaz leading Ineos Grenadiers, which in itself basically says, to me anyway, Danny Martinez will probably lead them at the Tour.
Yeah, well, you'd have to think. I know Egan Bernal's back on his bike, but he's obviously not going to be in any shape to ride a Grand Tour anytime soon. No. It's hard to say. They've got such depth at that team that there's 3 or 4 guys they could turn up with. I know Geraint Thomas is struggling with his sticky bottles and whatever at the moment as well. But
I mean, then you've got Theo Gegenhardt, who's not in the Giro team. He'll be probably in the Tour team. No Pipo Ganna this year.
No, strange he's not. Well, as we've said, there's only 27 kilometers time trialing.
There's very little in there for him.
But he is Italian, so I thought. Oh, also he's been doing all the promo for the trophy recently. Him and Cobrelli have been taking it around northern Italy.
I feel very sorry for them because the Giro have gone very hard on all of their promo videos across their YouTube. It's like, here's Ganna in the World Champs jersey, rolling down the start ramp. And he's not. He's like, nah, I fancy France this summer, boys.
Yeah, and Cobrelli as well. Obviously, has come off the season of his life, and then unfortunately has obviously spent quite a bit of time in hospital since then and won't be riding either.
Yeah, there's actually not, when you look at the Italians that are competing in this race, there's not that many of the big, like Caruso's not there this year either, and he came second last year.
Oh, there's a few. Nibali is obviously the big name in Italian cycling still. Formolo and people. There's some good Italian riders. I think Ciccone will be leading that Trek team as well, although I've got no idea what's happening in that Trek team. It just looks a bizarre lineup, but Ciccone is the first name on the list. So.
Is there anything or anyone that stands out to you in particular, Tom, that you're excited to see?
In terms of the GC or just in general?
Well, in terms of anything, Tom, in terms of the riders, in terms of the GC, in terms of,
Well, we talked about Mathieu van der Poel. Obviously, he is always the one. I'm very excited to see what he does. It'll be his second Grand Tour. What he did at the Tour last year was completely mad. Just turned up, decided to make it a 1 week race, and just went all out every day. I don't know if he'll do the same again or if he fancies actually trying to finish it this time.
Well, we still haven't. I think he will try and finish it, and we still haven't seen him in the high mountains. I mean, last year at the Tour, he abandoned the race before the first big mountain stage in Tignes. His reason for abandoning the Tour early was because he wanted to prep for the Olympics. And we all know how that went now, didn't it?
Well, yeah.
He crashed at the first ramp and screwed his back and has barely raced since then. Well, he hasn't. He's won Flanders and stuff since then, so it's been all right.
Yeah.
But I don't think we're looking at a campaign for him, which is nab the pink jersey, have a few days in pink, back home. I think he'll be there in the final week.
Yeah, no, as you said, having had that injury, it's difficult to say he's riding himself back into form when he's already won Flanders and performed so well at the other classics. But I still do get that impression with him that he is. I still don't think he's at tip-top condition. So he probably, even if he's not able to compete for the stage wins later on, well, he certainly won't be in that third week because it's disgusting. But I think he'd want to carry on because it would be just really useful to put those kilometers in the legs as well.
Yeah, let's hope so. For me, I think Bahrain have got quite a good team here. Pello Bilbao leading for them, Mikel Landa, Wout Poels, Jan Tratnik, Bauhaus for the sprints. I think it's quite a well-rounded team, that one.
It's a very strong team. I think there's a few like that. The Bora team, they've got 2 or 3 guys. I think they're going for, just sort of a triple-pronged attack at the GC. UAE Emirates as well, who I think have turned up with 2 or 3 really strong climbers. So, yeah, it seems to be gone is the approach of turning up with like a designated leader and look, these guys are going to help you out. It's like, who have we got on the day? Obviously, circumstances during the race, someone might have mechanicals, crash, whatever. So you never know. But there's teams who are leaving themselves, there's plan A's, plan B's, and plan C's all over the road now.
Yeah, I'm excited for it. I think for me, and this is, for want of not sounding like a broken record here, I'm quite excited for the DSM team because
I was wondering when this was coming. I wasn't going to lead you into it, but
I'll do a short bit on it here. The duo of Romain Bardet and Timo Arensman is looking quite formidable.
You know what? I didn't want to have to say this, but Bardet's looking like he's in really good form.
He's looking really good, isn't he? He does look like he's found a good home at DSM. He's had a good start to the season. He won the Tour of the Alps, which was his first stage race since 2013, I think. I know that. And yeah, he came 7th last year. Again, I know that. So I think we're looking at a top 5 here. Sadly, I can't say I know that, but
we'll see. Again, yeah. Sadly, yeah. I don't hate Romain Bardet. I just don't love him like you do. So I've got to play the other side here. But yeah, for once, I will concede. Bardet's looking good.
Any more? Can I push you for more on that?
No, that's all I'll say. He's not. I've got 4 riders written down here who are my favourites. We've talked about Carapaz.
Picking 4 favourites.
No, just the 4 who stood out. Because I think it'll be Carapaz. If you're asking me now who I think will win, Carapaz is the answer.
I was going to get onto that, and I was going to say Carapaz too. So that's that bit out of the way. But go on, give me your other 3.
The other 3, I've got Guillaume Martin.
Right.
Because I don't know. I feel like he flatters to deceive a lot. But he's definitely one of those who on his day is, I think this is the thing, it's on his day. Is very rare that he has 20 consecutive of those days.
No, you say that. He came somewhere in the Tour once. Sorry, that would have a lot more backing if I knew the stats. But he came like 5th or 6th or 7th in the Tour like 2 years ago or last year.
Yeah, but
hang on, wait,
again,
wait, hang on. I've got his book right here, and I'm pretty sure it says it on the back of it. Born in 1993, professional cyclist with a diploma in a Master of Philosophy. Guillaume Martin came 8th in the general classification in the 2021 Tour de France.
But that's it. He was right up there and then just fell off. Like, it was very Pinot-esque. Just had one day where the wheels fell off, and that was the Tour. The GC hope's over for him. So I'd be wary of that happening again. I've got Tom Dumoulin's name here as well.
That's a bit optimistic, I think.
I think very interesting to see him back at the Giro, but he is a former winner. I know he's taken a year off and then barely raced since he's come back as well. But I'm just quite interested to see what sort of form he's in. And then Simon Philip Yates.
Simon Philip Yates. How could we forget? How could we get this far into the episode and not mention Simon Philip Yates? Of course.
He's looked on really good form. He's not been in Romandy with the rest of the with Romain Bardet. No, not Bardet. He was the Tour of the Alps. Sorry. He has been at the Vuelta a Asturias, I think
he has
been, and has looked very good there. They also call it La Vueltina, which I didn't know, which I quite like.
Vueltina. That's quite nice.
Nice little diminutive there.
It's like a little bite-sized version.
Yeah. And I believe he's cleaned up there and is now coming over to the Giro. And I think he, until he was undone by Chris Froome, everyone thought he was cruising to a Giro win a few years ago as well. So I think this is probably the best chance he's had since to put that right.
And he was third last year, I think. It was Carapaz, Caruso, Yates. No, Bernal, Caruso, Yates. But there was quite a lot of daylight between all three of them, I think. You know what? I would back SPY for this one as well.
Over Carapaz?
Not over Carapaz, sadly not. I think Carapaz has got this one in the bag. I think he can start, celebrating now, really. But hey, who knows? And we will check in, Tom. Probably not the first rest day, probably the second rest day. Until then, the Giro starts on Friday. It starts on Friday.
See, if only you were as clued up on this as you were on Romain Bardet trivia. The Giro starts on Friday, the 6th of May. Correct.
Yeah, I knew it. Giro starts Friday, the 6th of May. Not much more to say about that. We've got no sponsors, so we're not plugging any of the programs for that. But enjoy it. That's all I can say. And thank you for listening to this preview. You will go into that Giro, Tom, both you and the listener, much more aware of the topography of Italy and everything else. Tom, if people are sat on their sofas watching the Giro and they think, you know what I want to do? I want to get in touch with the TT podcast. Tom, where can they do that?
They can do it on Twitter and Instagram simply by searching for TTPDCST. And I will be there. I could be saying anything because there's a lot of Italian trivia that I have not said in this episode. So there's plenty more to come.
Right. Let's not put people off listening to the next few episodes. Until then, thank you very much for listening, Tom. A pleasure as always. And we'll speak next time. Take care, everyone.